Hey guys, it's Kaylee, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm here for my weekly reading wrap up for the last week. Usually I film and upload this video on a Friday, but this week I got a fairly spontaneous phone call on Tuesday inviting me back to work. So I have been working for the last 3 days and I'm back to my usual schedule of being working full time, out the house for like 11 hours a day. So yeah, I definitely have a lot less time to read and less time to film, but that's okay. I still managed to finish 3 books this week, mostly before I went back to work, but I'm going to wrap those books up for you today and talk about the books I'm currently reading, and then we will just see how we get on. So let's get started. So the first book that I finished this week was Spring by Ali Smith. So this book is quite a difficult one for me to review. I think I mentioned before that I have read Autumn and Winter, and Autumn I liked somewhat, and then Winter I really enjoyed. This one I think I enjoyed kind of on the same level as Autumn. I really love the way that Ali Smith manages to weave together different narratives and different ideas into one sort of cohesive novel, and she does that really well in this book. So we get stories from a few different characters that seem, I guess, quite disparate at the beginning and then come together at the end. So we follow a man named Richard, who is an old filmmaker, and he is struggling with the death of a really close friend. We also meet Britt, who is a young woman and she works at a detention facility. And then we also meet a young girl who kind of enters these other two characters' lives, and she has an almost sort of magical effect on people in her life, which was really interesting to see her character and how it affected other people. I really loved in this book the way Ali Smith talks about writing and about literature. She talks quite a lot about different old sort of literary figures, which I thought was really interesting, and I just absolutely love, I guess, like the art of language and the art of storytelling, and I think Ali Smith talks about those sorts of topics in such a beautiful way. She's also just a really good wordsmith. Like, she plays with words and with language quite a lot in her writing, and that's, I think, what I love about her books, and so that was really present in this one, and I absolutely loved that. She does also talk about different current events and current issues, like the other books in this seasonal quartet, and I have to say I like that a little bit less than the other discussions that she has, but it was still very interesting, and I liked that because the characters are of such varying ages, we can see the different effects of these current issues on a wide variety of different characters and how it affects them. I did find the last sort of third of this book, the last section, was probably my least favourite, and that was where like all of these different storylines and narratives kind of came together. And I don't know, I think for me it was maybe just slightly underwhelming. I didn't get the sort of impact that I wanted from these narratives coming together that I was hoping for. And overall, I didn't really feel like I had this sort of emotional connection to the characters that I really need, to be honest, when I'm reading. I think for me, this book has made it apparent that I love Ali Smith's writing, but I think I would prefer her work in a shorter form. And I've never read her short stories, but I think after reading this, I get the idea that I might prefer her short stories more than her novels. So we'll see. I still really love this, and I'm definitely going to be continuing on and reading Summer when it comes out, but I think the next thing I will jump to for Ali Smith is a collection of short stories. So yeah, still really enjoyed this. I would recommend it, but Winter is definitely still my favourite. If you have read any of Ali Smith's short stories, then I'd be really interested to see what you guys recommend and where I should start with them. The next book that I finished this week was Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, and this was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved it. So this book has a really unique premise. It is basically like a courtroom novel, and we follow several different characters' perspectives who are all involved in this fatal accident at a hyperbaric oxygen facility. Yeah, really interesting. And when I first started opening the book and reading the first few pages about this treatment, I was like, oh, is this going to be like really medical and I'm not really going to understand what it's talking about? But it was just really interesting. I think what I loved most about this book were the characters. So quite often if you're reading a book from multiple perspectives, you'll find that the characters are less fleshed out and less fully developed because there's less time with each person. But actually the characters in this book all felt so real to me, and I just loved them all. What was really interesting about all of these characters is that none of them are portrayed as the good guy or the bad guy. Like, they're all sort of morally grey, and everyone has different opinions, and as the reader we're never sure who to trust and whose opinion we should be agreeing with, which I think is really, really brilliant. The way that the novel was structured also helped with this as well, and I really loved the way it was structured. So we start off with the night of the event, when this explosion takes place. And then the novel jumps forward to, I think, about a year later when the trial is happening. And we go through day by day of the trial and hear from different characters' perspectives how they're feeling and what's going on. And obviously this trial that's happening, like, there's someone is, I guess, being accused of being responsible for this explosion at the oxygen treatment. And so we as the reader are kind of trying to work out, like, do we agree with that? Do we think this person was responsible, or do we think it was someone else? And is it that simple? Is it really black and white, or do multiple people have some sort of involvement in the explosion? So we open the book with Young, who is a mother and a wife, and she and her family have moved from South Korea to America quite a few years ago in the hopes of having a better life. Her husband Pak actually owns and runs this private hyperbaric oxygen facility, and Young and her daughter move out to America first, and they're out there for a few years before Pak joins them, and then they start this business. So this family really opens up and talks about the discussion of immigration and how each of the family members actually feel like moving to America, like what they go through in terms of how people react to them and how they're coping with the different culture. And it was really, really interesting to hear those discussions from both Young, Pak and their daughter. We also meet several mums and their children, and also a young man who is a friend of Young's family, who are all patients of this oxygen treatment. So it is said that this treatment will cure illnesses such as autism, infertility, things that I guess a lot of people will assume are incurable and have maybe lost hope. And these mums, these people, have decided that they're going to keep trucking along and try and do everything that they can to support and to help their children get better. And I think even just that act in itself really opens up a discussion when you're reading the book about disability and about what a good quality of life actually is. And, you know, some of the people in the book, there are actually protesters at this treatment facility. They think that it's not right to be putting the children through this when it's not helping them, and it's just, I guess, like an unpleasant experience to continuously go through treatment. Like, why can't you just love your children the way that they are? But then you also see from the mum's point of view and see where they're coming from, that they want to do everything that they can, and if there's a chance that their child might get better and improve, then they really want to go for it. So it's really interesting, and to be honest, reading the book, like I said earlier, you don't ever lean towards one opinion. You're always thinking that, oh yeah, I can see their point, and it's very backwards and forwards. And I think Angie Kim does a really good job of not forcing an opinion on you as the reader, and really allowing you to make up your own mind on how you feel about these different issues. And then from like a plot and pacing perspective, this book was just so compulsive. It was so readable. I thought that the storyline itself was paced really, really well, in a way that meant I was just continuously wanting to read. I was reading multiple books at the same time, and I always went to this one to pick up and basically read it from start to finish without reading anything else in between, because I was just so hooked on the storyline and just really wanted to keep my momentum going throughout the book. So overall, when I finished the book and was really thinking about what to talk about and how to rate it, it was an instant 5-star for me, because I thought I just loved the plot itself. It was so exciting. The characters were great. The writing was brilliant. So yeah, I would really recommend this book. I think if you've read Little Fires Everywhere, it gave me the same sort of vibe. Like, those books aren't similar really in terms of plot or character, but it gave me that same sort of feeling. So I think if you enjoyed that, then you would maybe enjoy this book. I think if you're looking for like an extreme thriller, like, that's not what this is. It's very character focused, and although I found it quite fast paced, it's not like a crazy murder mystery. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. If that sounds like your cup of tea, I would definitely recommend that you pick it up. And then the last book that I finished this week was from NetGalley. So this is Breaking and Mending by Joanna Cannon. So this is her quite short reflections, I guess, on her time as a medical student and as a junior doctor. So she talks about the different experiences that she's had during that time, and quite a lot of it feels very sort of anecdotal, and she's kind of just reflecting on the memories that she had from that time. And the chapters are quite short, and she kind of jumps from interaction to interaction, rather than it being like a through narrative. But each of the anecdotes that she mentions, she kind of seamlessly transitions from one to the next. So it does have a very readable quality to it. I found this book to be very moving and very insightful. And Joanna Cannon has a really natural gift at writing with such humanity and compassion. Like, she talks in the book about the two different types of doctors that you can get: the people that become a doctor for the people, and the people that become a doctor for like the medicine side of things. And I think she definitely comes across in a way that proves what she says, and that she is the kind of person that became a doctor because she loves the people. The way that she talks about her patients and the different people that she comes to interact with is just really heartwarming and very warm. And I just really love that about her writing, and I think as a reader you really warm to her as a person. She also discusses quite a lot about her actual experience in the job. So not just dealing with the really difficult patients and, you know, the emotional side of being a doctor, and that you come to know the people that you work with, but also the logistics of the job. Like, she talks about how difficult it is in terms of in the shift. Like, she maybe wouldn't eat or drink or have a rest for hours and hours and hours. And she talks about different doctors who would maybe be driving home and have accidents or fall asleep at the wheel. And I think that's the side of the job that maybe a lot of people don't talk about, even though we know that that goes on and that happens. And she was just very open and honest about the experience and how it felt for her. She talks about a lot of different sides of the profession as well in terms of medicine, and she talks quite a lot about psychiatry, because she did work on a psychiatric ward, but she also talks about different experiences when maybe she was working in A&E or on different wards. And so we do get quite a well-rounded idea of what it was like to work in the hospital. And she doesn't really elaborate too much on the medical side of things, which I was quite glad, to be honest, because I'm not a sciencey person. Like, I wouldn't have understood it if it was really medical heavy, but she talks about it enough that it was really interesting, but I think very accessible to like your average reader. So overall, like, when I finished this book, I kind of felt like it was maybe just a little bit rushed and the ending was a little abrupt. I think, like I said before, she kind of goes from anecdote to anecdote, and it felt like a page before the end of the book we were just on another anecdote and then it ended. So I felt like we were missing quite a lot of discussion about the after effects of Cannon's decision to actually leave medicine, and really what was going through her mind. And she does explore throughout the book, as the title suggests, how the profession can break you down and how she was really coping with burnout. But I would have just liked a little bit more discussion about the sort of ending few months, I guess, of her making that decision and coming to terms with it, and how that actually happened and how other people in her life maybe felt about that. And then as well, the way that the book began, it I guess, quite abrupt as well. So she kind of just opens with being accepted to medical school. So I think had those sort of bookends maybe been padded out a little bit more, I would have gotten the fulfillment that I needed from it, and it would have made the book a little bit longer and felt a little bit more finished to me. Having said that though, it was a very, very enjoyable read. I definitely would recommend it, and I think it's accessible to any type of reader. So if you're interested in this sort of thing, I would definitely give it a go. I think it was really insightful into a job that I have very little knowledge about, really moving, and I really enjoyed Joanna Cannon's writing throughout the book as well. So those are all of the books that I finished this last week, and I am currently in the middle of 2 books, which I will mention quickly. So the first one is The Iliad by Homer, which I have mentioned before. I am still chugging away at this one, and I've not really made much progress since I last spoke to you, with going back to work and everything, so still working on this one. And then I'm also currently in the middle of Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. So I'm in the middle of my reread of this book, and I'm almost halfway through, so I'm hoping to get this one finished possibly tonight. So that is everything from me today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have read any of these books and want to chat to me about them in the comments, then please do so. I would love to have a conversation. And again, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!